Welcome to Davincifer, to the point where the light of logic ends and the shadows begin to speak. We are here today to lift the veil on stories that time and reason have consumed. Today, we will not talk about a gruesome murder or a multi-million-dollar heist, but about something far deeper and more mind-numbing, a complete and untraceable vanishing from the face of the earth. A disappearance that, even today, over a decade after it occurred, remains a black hole in the heart of Europe. It all began in August 2007 in the small, quiet town of Vimperk in the Czech Republic. Vimperk, a desolate, cold, and secluded town, nestled among dense forests and misty hills, is a gateway to the silent border regions of Germany and towering mountains. This area is ideal for those seeking absolute peace. But for those seeking to disappear without a trace, it is even more ideal. This is where the Soutek family lived. Yuri Soutek, the father, his wife, and their 7-year-old daughter. A seemingly ordinary life, in a seemingly ordinary house on 173th Street. But behind this facade, a secret was hidden. Yuri Soutek's profession. Yuri was a collector of rare historical and artistic objects. Not the kind of collector who proudly displays their items in glittering galleries. Yuri's collecting was done in the shadows. A world full of high-risk dealing, historical documents stolen from museums, ancient maps that only an experienced broker could value, and transactions with people who never reveal their true identities. Was Yuri merely a legitimate dealer, or a pawn in a much larger game? A game where the lines between law and crime dangerously blurred? This question is the cornerstone of our mystery, and the answer may be hidden in the very silence of the Soutek house. Everything started the next morning, on August 29th, with a cold, unusual silence that made itself known even before the disappearance was discovered. Karel, Yuri's friend and colleague, had a business meeting with him. Karel tried repeatedly to call Yuri's house and mobile phone, but only a continuous, frustrating tone echoed back. The silence worried Karel. He knew Yuri was punctual and committed to his appointments. He couldn't simply skip an important deal. Karel decided to go to house 173 himself. When Karel arrived, he faced a scene far stranger than he had expected. The house was not locked. The front door opened gently. The smell of cold coffee and stale bread left on the breakfast table were the first sensations that greeted him. Absolute silence. No sound of the television, no sound of the daughter playing. Nothing. The breakfast table was set, 3 plates, with food half-eaten. A coffee cup from which only a few sips had been taken. It was as if they had only stepped out to buy bread and were supposed to return within minutes. But time had stopped for Souteks at that very moment. Karel, with fear and caution, went to Yuri's study. Yuri's computer was on. The last page open was an online auction site with astronomical prices for a historical document that Yuri desperately wanted. He had suddenly left the house exactly in the middle of a very important business activity. What force could compel a man to abandon everything in the middle of a high-stakes transaction? This excessive normalcy was itself a huge shock, a scene that was consistent neither with a rushed escape nor a violent kidnapping. A house, with no physical evidence, screamed that something terrible had happened. A dramatic silence that confronted the police from the start with a major paradox. How can a perfect crime be deciphered in a completely ordinary scene? And wasn't this silence itself a clue? The Czech police immediately dispatched specialized teams and forensic units to house 173 in Vimperk. Crime scene analysts meticulously examined every inch of the house. They were looking for any sign of struggle, blood, unfamiliar fingerprints, or any disarray. But the result was utterly strange. Nothing was found. The house, visually, was clean and untouched, as if an invisible force had erased a family from time and space. But the logic was messy and convoluted, and this was the very language the evidence was trying to speak. The first paradox, and perhaps the most important clue, concerned the family's wealth and identity. In Yuri's wallet, A sum of cash for daily expenses remained. This money was in no way sufficient for a prolonged escape. In the bedroom drawer, his wife's gold and jewelry were untouched and unchanged. Most importantly, all the family's financial and legal documents, including the passports of all three, IDs, credit cards, and bank books, were in their place. This family, if they were fleeing, had abandoned all the necessary tools to start a new life or even continue their normal life. The police immediately concluded that if this was a voluntary escape, no logic in this complete abandonment of identity and wealth existed. The lead investigator of the case said in one of his initial interviews, "This was a message. They didn't intend to live with their former identities, but if someone intends to hide, they at least take their money." But this statement itself raised a bigger question. If the goal was the destruction of the old identity, why were all the clothes taken? This is where we come to the strangest and most crucial piece of evidence in this case, something that completely changed the course of the investigation and led the police to conclude that this was a mystery beyond a simple disappearance. In the bedrooms, the closets were opened, and the police were met with a shocking image. The closets were completely empty. All of the Soutek family's clothes, from the smallest pieces of underwear and socks to winter coats and seasonal shoes, had vanished. No extra clothes, no packed suitcases, no travel bags full of personal belongings were found. It was as if an organized force had only taken the physically necessary items for daily life, while money and identity were worthless to the perpetrators. This contradiction completely confused the investigation team and led to two different paths. If it was a kidnapping, why would the kidnappers allow the family to pack all their clothes? And if it was a voluntary escape, why did they abandon the money and documents? This scene was no longer a simple disappearance. This was a clever staging, a planned move that contradicted all familiar criminal laws. The Souteks left the identity and money and only took their clothes. It was as if they knew they needed clothing at their new destination, but their identity would be provided by a third party. This leads us toward the involvement of much larger and more powerful organizations, perhaps a government agency, perhaps a trafficking group that transferred them to an unknown location. And it is here that the curtain is lifted and we arrive at the first real clue, the hidden codes in the trash can, a message Yuri Soutek left for us. In Yuri Soutek's study, underneath the thin layer of waste paper and old receipts, several crumpled pieces of paper were found. These were the key to our mystery. These were neither love letters nor ordinary shopping lists. Instead, they were a collection of unrelated words, jumbled numbers, and English letters that, at first glance, made no straightforward sense. Experienced detectives immediately realized these were codes. Codes that could only be deciphered with a specific key. Cryptographic experts were called in. Analysis of these words showed a strong resemblance to codes used in international trafficking networks to determine cargo delivery locations, safe rendezvous points, or emergency exit routes. Words that, if placed correctly side by side, could point to a secret address, a precise time, or even a specific escape route. By leaving these codes in the trash can, Yuri had essentially done two things. First, he had confirmed that his activities were in a dangerous, underground world. And second, he had sent a hidden distress signal. A message that might only be understood by a specific individual or a security unit. Now, the picture of Yuri Soutek was complete. He was no longer just a solitary, harmless collector. He was an active player in a network operating in Eastern Europe, smuggling artwork, historical documents, and perhaps even people. His case was no longer a simple household disappearance, but a complex, organized event with deep roots in the criminal underworld. Psychological speculation reaches its peak here. If Yuri knew he was in danger, why didn't he convey these codes in a more obvious form or with a more direct message? The simple answer is he was being watched. He knew investigators would check the trash can, but he wanted the message to be understandable only to those who knew the language of the code. This was not a heroic act to send a cry for help, but a desperate and clever attempt to save his and his family's lives. This was a hidden battle in the final moments. These codes, alongside the contradictory evidence from the house, lead us to three main and horrifying theories, each projecting a different end for the Souteks. Theory 1. Exit under protection. Based on this theory, Yuri Soutek had become a double agent for the police, or a major intelligence agency. He had acquired important information about his trafficking network. These agencies transferred the family to a witness protection program to ensure their safety. Abandoning financial and identity documents is part of the protocol, the complete destruction of the old identity. Taking all the clothes was a sign of starting a new, controlled life, without permission to shop freely. In this scenario, the Souteks are alive, but living in the shadows. But if this happened, why have no government agencies mentioned this case even years later? Theory 2. Retaliation and silent warning. This is the darkest and, for many detectives, the most probable theory. Yuri Soutek had betrayed his gang or intended to leave the trafficking network. As a result, the gang kidnapped him and his family and killed them in a remote, unmarked location. Taking all the clothes was a clever move to eliminate any fingerprints, DNA, or physical evidence that could leave a trace. But leaving the money and documents was a humiliating act and a bloody message to the rest of the gang. We will destroy not only your life, but your identity too. You will have no existence from this moment on. In this scenario, the Souteks are dead, and their bodies will never be found. Theory 3. Organized escape and voluntary hidden life. This theory suggests that Yuri, without police involvement, executed the biggest heist of his life and decided to disappear with the huge amount of money. He took the clothes to use during the journey, but abandoned his old identity to leave no trace for the police. This hypothesis, though attractive and the subject of many films, contradicts the logic of the half-eaten food and the computer left on. Who would be so careless during the great escape of their life? This indicates that the time they left the house was unexpected for them. More than 15 years have passed since the Soutek family disappeared, over a decade and a half. The case remains open. Every year, new teams of detectives, with fresh hope, reread the Soutek file, but each time, they return to the same cold, silent deadlock. No body, no sign of a new life anywhere in the world. No new bank account opened, no credit card used, no contact with relatives. It is as if the Soutek family has been completely erased from the face of the earth. They have been removed from the collective memory. The Soutek case is a powerful warning and a profound lesson for us about the nature of crime in the modern world, where crime is no longer a bloody, loud conflict in the streets, but a quiet, planned disappearance, a surgical operation to remove a life from collective memory, without bloodshed, without a scream, but with the same dark ending. The final cipher, in this case, was hidden not in a secret vault, nor in a locked room, but in the silence of an ordinary house. A house in a quiet town on the edge of a dense forest. A code hidden in the waterways of human and antiquity trafficking. Yuri Soutek and his family paid the price for this cipher with their complete vanishing. They knew what was coming. He tried to send a message, but this message was either never heard correctly, or perhaps deliberately left unheard. Are this family still alive? Are they spending their days in a remote hideout with new names, never looking back at their past? Or are their bones resting peacefully under the soil of the cold, misty forests on the Czech-German border? Were they victims of a grand game? Or did they also play a role in this game? This silence is the loudest scream. Now it's your turn to decipher. What is your theory about the fate of the Soutek family? is the key to the mystery hidden in those cryptic words in the trash can? Can you find this lost cipher? Share your theory with us in the comments section. Your opinions are an important part of Davincifer's investigations. Don't forget to subscribe to the Davincifer channel and turn on notifications to unlock the next mystery. Remember, the final cipher is always waiting somewhere to be discovered.